I didn't even want to go to that party. I was 2 days into the kind of bad mood that doesn't have a clear reason, just a fog of annoyance hanging over everything. Work had been crap, my sleep was off, even food tasted kind of meh. So when my friend Devin texted me the party address with a series of emojis and a guilt trip, I barely looked at it before tossing my phone aside. Not in the mood. Not tonight. But then, around 9:45, I found myself getting dressed anyway. I don't know why. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was because Devin always noticed when I didn't show up. Or maybe I just didn't want to be alone with myself again. My apartment felt too quiet, the couch too cold, and the silence too loud. I didn't dress to impress. Just jeans, a decent shirt, jacket over it, grabbed my keys. Told myself I'd stay for an hour max, make an appearance, say hey, then ghost like usual. The party was in this rental house near campus, the kind of place with a tiny front yard and way too many cars jammed along the curb. I parked 2 blocks away because of course I did. The street lights flickered overhead, and I second-guessed the entire plan with every step toward the house. I even paused at the end of the walkway, wondering if I could fake food poisoning and dip. And that's when he opened the door. He didn't just open it. He appeared, like the universe was waiting for that exact second to shove me off whatever emotional cliff I'd been teetering on. He had a beer in one hand, fingers resting on the neck of the bottle like he didn't really care about drinking it. His hair was short on the sides, a little messy up top, and he wore a navy hoodie zipped halfway over a faded graphic tee. His eyes were the kind that didn't miss much, sharp, curious. When he saw me on the porch, he smiled, not big or flashy, just this small, easy curve that felt unexpectedly personal. "You coming in or just standing there like a lost delivery guy?" That line made me huff a small laugh, despite myself. I was debating. He leaned his shoulder against the doorframe, still smiling. "Well, the beer's warm, the music's loud, and half the people don't know whose house this even is. So it's a solid C- party." "Convincing pitch?" I said. "I try." He stepped aside and tilted his head. "Come on, I'll show you the least terrible room." And just like that, I walked inside. The house was exactly what I expected. Half-empty bottles on counters, bodies pressed too close in the living room, someone yelling about awkward rights, and a bathroom line already forming. But he didn't take me toward any of that. He led me past the kitchen, down a short hallway, and into a smaller room that looked like a sunroom turned side lounge. The music was muffled here. A lamp glowed from the corner. 2 people sat in chairs, talking softly. It smelled like incense and weed and someone's cherry vape. He flopped onto the far end of a worn love seat and patted the cushion beside him. "I'm Milo, by the way." "Drew. Nice to meet you, Drew," who almost left. I sat, unsure what to say. His energy was relaxed, like we were already friends, like this wasn't strange at all. But I felt off balance. Not in a bad way, just not in control. "You friends with the birthday girl?" I asked. "Cousin," he said. "She begged me to show up so she could say I came. I've been hiding in here ever since." "Same," I muttered. He glanced over, eyes narrowing slightly like he was putting something together. "You're not a party guy either?" "I'm more of a ghost-in-the-corner type." Milo laughed. "You picked a bad corner then. That couch absorbs secrets. If you sit there too long, you end up talking about your worst heartbreak or the best head you've ever had." I snorted. "That a promise?" "Just a pattern I've noticed." He turned toward me, one leg bent under the other, fully facing me now. He wasn't trying to flirt, not in the obvious way, but he wasn't not doing it either. And suddenly I was aware of the way his knee touched mine. Casual, light, but present. "You always this good at convincing people to stay?" I asked. "Only when they look like they need it," he said. That shut me up, because I didn't expect the answer to land. But it did, right in the space I'd been trying to ignore for days. We didn't talk for a few seconds, just sat there in that little room, breathing in the quiet. And I started to think maybe I wasn't going to leave after all. I don't remember everything we talked about in that first hour. That's the strange part. It wasn't anything deep, at least not at first. We started with music, then TV shows, Then some mutual slandering of dating apps. The kind of light conversation that dances along the surface, but keeps you just engaged enough to want more. But Milo had this way of steering things, of asking questions that made you say more than you meant to. And it was comfortable. Too comfortable, honestly. At some point, someone I vaguely recognized from college wandered into the room, looked around, then backed out without saying a word. I barely noticed. Milo didn't even glance up. "You always this quiet?" he asked eventually, twisting the beer bottle in his hands. "I talk when I have something to say," he nodded like that made perfect sense. "Introvert? Big time." "Same." "Bullshit," I said before I could stop myself. He grinned. "What, just because I talk to a stranger on a porch? You're like effortless. You act like this is normal." "Doesn't mean it is." There was a pause. Then he added, "I've just had more practice pretending." And that stuck with me. The way he said it, not heavy, not dramatic, just matter of fact. Like he wasn't trying to impress me, like he was letting me in on something. I didn't respond, I didn't have to. The silence between us wasn't awkward. If anything, it felt like a relief, like I didn't have to perform here. Eventually, he stood up. "Come on, you need a drink. I'm good. You've had nothing but couch air and existential dread since you walked in. Dread's my comfort zone." "Come on," he said again, tugging the edge of my jacket like a kid trying to get his older brother's attention. "Just 5 minutes." So I followed him. We wove through the kitchen, past a couple making out near the fridge, and someone doing an impressively bad job at pouring a shot. Milo handed me a red cup from the counter, inspecting it first like he was making sure no one had spiked it with anything weird. "Just soda," he said, passing it to me. "Didn't peg you as the tequila type." "You've known me for an hour." I'm observant. I took a sip to hide the fact that I was weirdly flattered. "Someone called his name then. Some guy in a flannel shirt who looked like he was halfway through a bong hit." Milo waved, but didn't go over. "You know everyone here?" I asked. "Unfortunately," he said. "I've made poor choices in friends," I smirked. "And I'm the upgrade?" "Massive upgrade. You don't smell like weed or cry about your ex." "Yet?" He laughed, and I found myself watching him a little too closely, the way his shoulders moved when he laughed, how his mouth curved just a little off-center. I looked away before he caught me. We moved to the back porch where it was quieter again. The night was cold but bearable. A string of mismatched fairy lights flickered over the railing, casting a soft glow on the crowd of smokers and couples leaning into each other like the cold made them magnetic. We stood near the edge of the porch, close enough to hear the music inside, far enough to be alone. "So what brought you here, really?" he asked, glancing at me sideways. "Guilt, friend pressure." "No curiosity?" "None," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You regretting it yet?" "I don't know." Milo nodded slowly, then leaned forward just slightly, his elbow brushing mine. "Not a great review." "I'm still deciding." "You always like this?" "What? Honest?" "Guarded." That made me pause. "Yeah, usually." He didn't respond right away, just looked out at the yard like he was weighing something. Then he said, "It's weird. I almost didn't come tonight either." I glanced at him. "Why did you?" He shrugged. "Got tired of avoiding things, tired of the same excuses." I didn't know what to say to that, but I felt it, something in his voice, in the way he leaned against the porch railing, with his head tilted back, like he was watching the stars, even though they were mostly hidden behind clouds and city haze. I felt like I was supposed to say something, ask something, but the words stuck in my throat. And then he looked at me again, really looked, and said, "Do you want to get out of here?" I blinked. "What?" "Not like that," he added quickly, holding up his hands. "I meant, like, get food. Go somewhere that doesn't feel like a TikTok compilation of bad decisions." I laughed under my breath. "You sure you're not drunk?" "Totally sober. Come on. It's barely midnight." "I don't know. You ever been to Tony's Diner?" "I've heard of it. They make pancakes the size of your head." "That's weirdly convincing." Milo grinned. "That's my specialty." I should have said no. I should have stuck to my plan. Show face. Leave early. Avoid any chance of being vulnerable with a guy who was, quite frankly, too attractive to be this interesting. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "Let me grab my jacket." He waited, smiling like he already knew the answer. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a pull in my chest I didn't recognize at first. It was hope. Tony's Diner was the kind of place that hadn't updated anything since the early 2000s, but somehow still pulled it off. The neon sign flickered over the parking lot, the interior lighting had that faint yellow hue like it was always stuck on 3 a.m., and the booths were made of red vinyl that squeaked every time you moved. And it was perfect. We grabbed a booth near the back, away from the door. Milo slid in across from me like we did this every weekend, like this was a routine. The waitress brought menus without even pretending to be cheerful, then walked away before we could say thanks. Milo smirked after her. "She likes us. She definitely hates you," I said. "That's fair." I scanned the menu, though I already knew I'd end up ordering pancakes. Milo stretched out in the booth, his foot lightly bumping mine under the table. Not in a flirty way, just comfortable, like he forgot we were strangers. Except it didn't feel like we were anymore. "So," he said, tapping the menu, "what's your tragic backstory?" "What?" he grinned. "Come on, everyone's got one." "Yours is probably dramatic. Quiet guy, sad eyes, a vinyl collection." "I don't own vinyl." "Then you're definitely hiding something." I shook my head. "No tragic backstory. Just regular life. Work, bills, anxiety, you know." Milo hummed, not buying it. The truth was, I didn't like talking about myself. Not because I had some dark secret. Just because people rarely stuck around when you stopped being interesting. It was easier to keep things light. Keep things controlled. But Milo didn't seem like he was going anywhere. So I said, "I had a boyfriend last year. It ended badly. I've been off since then." He nodded like he understood. "How bad is bad?" "He cheated." I said simply, "Oof." "Classic," Milo said, wincing. "Sorry." "It's fine. Honestly, I was more embarrassed than heartbroken." "Still sucks." "Yeah." The waitress returned then, dropping off waters and snapping her gum. "You ready?" We both ordered pancakes. Milo added a chocolate milkshake, and she raised one eyebrow before walking off again like she was personally offended by our choices. Milo leaned in after she left. "She totally loves me," I laughed, and for the first time all night it didn't feel guarded. "Your turn," I said. "What? Tragic backstory?" "You brought it up." Milo looked down at his water, swirled the straw slowly, then said, "I was outed in high school. Not on my terms. Lost a lot of friends that week." My stomach clenched. "Damn." "Yeah," he said, "but it's okay now. I'm not trying to be all after-school special about it. Just, it shaped things, you know?" I nodded. We didn't say anything for a bit after that. The silence between us wasn't heavy, though. It was thoughtful, comfortable. Like we both needed a minute to just let things settle. Then our food came. Massive plates of pancakes that looked almost comical. Milo grinned like a kid on Christmas. "Behold," he said dramatically, "the cure to all emotional trauma." I couldn't help but smile. He poured syrup with reckless abandon, then took a huge bite and groaned dramatically. "Holy shit, I would marry these pancakes. I think that's illegal in most states. Then we'll move." I watched him shovel another bite into his mouth, and for a second, I let myself just enjoy this moment. This weird, spontaneous, 1 a.m. diner date with a guy I'd known for 3 hours who already felt like someone I didn't want to stop knowing. He looked up and caught me staring. "What?" he said, his mouth half full. "Nothing." "No." "What?" I hesitated, then shrugged. "You're just not what I expected." He raised an eyebrow. "What'd you expect?" "I don't know. Something more fake, or flirty, or performative." Ouch. I meant it as a compliment. He smiled, and there was something softer behind it this time. I get that a lot, he said. People think I'm this confident, outgoing guy who's always on. But really, I'm just good at acting like I'm fine. I nodded slowly. I know that game. He leaned back, eyes still on me. Maybe that's why we're getting along. Because we're both faking it? Because we both notice when someone's not. That hit me harder than I expected. We kept eating after that, talking about everything and nothing, childhood nicknames, favorite movie villains, the weirdest dreams we'd ever had. I told him about my dog back home. He told me about the time he got caught sneaking out to meet a guy he'd met online and ended up hiding in a neighbor's shed for 2 hours. It was 2:30 a.m. before we knew it. We split the bill, left a tip big enough to confuse the waitress, and stepped back out into the cold. His car was parked closer than mine. We stood there by the passenger door, neither of us making the first move to say goodbye. "You want a ride?" he asked finally. I should have said no. It was late. I had work tomorrow. I barely knew him, but I nodded. "Yeah, sure." He unlocked the doors and I climbed in. And maybe it was the tiredness, or the pancakes, or the way the night had just worked. But I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel tense. I just felt good. Milo glanced at me as he started the engine. "Still glad you came to the party?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think I am," and I meant it. The car ride back was quiet. Not awkward quiet. Not the kind of silence that screams someone say something before this gets weird. It was the kind of silence that follows a good night, when everything's been said that needed to be, and what's left is just comfort. The low hum of the engine. The occasional click of Milo's blinker. A faint indie song playing from his phone, so soft I could barely make out the lyrics. The city was sleeping as we drove. Empty sidewalks. Flickering traffic lights. The occasional car parked half crooked against the curb like the driver gave up halfway through. I watched the world pass by in a blur of yellow streetlights and shadowed buildings, and I didn't feel the usual weight pressing down on my chest. I didn't feel restless, or small, or wrong. I just felt here. Milo glanced over as we pulled up to my apartment. "You live up there?" "Top floor." "Nice. I bet the view's insane." "It is. On clear days you can see downtown and the bridge." He turned off the engine but didn't move to get out. The car filled with that stillness again. The kind of pause that comes before something changes. "You good?" he asked, not looking at me. "Yeah? You sure?" I hesitated, then said, "Yeah, it's been a while since I felt this okay." Milo finally turned to look at me, his face softer now, eyes tired but warm. Same. We sat there for another beat. I thought maybe that was it. He'd say goodnight. I'd get out, we'd trade numbers, and maybe text tomorrow if neither of us chickened out. But then he shifted in his seat, leaning just a little closer. "Can I walk you up?" That wasn't what I expected. It wasn't even flirty. It was careful. Like he was trying not to break something delicate between us. "Yeah," I said, "sure." We got out and climbed the stairs side by side. My building wasn't anything fancy, peeling paint on the stairwell railings, hallways that always smelled faintly like old takeout, but I suddenly felt weirdly self-conscious showing him around. Milo didn't say anything, just followed me up 3 flights until we reached my door. I unlocked it, pushed it open, and motioned for him to come in. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then stepped inside. It was quiet. Dim. Just the faint glow from the kitchen light I always left on. I dropped my keys into the dish by the door and toed off my shoes. Milo did the same, looking around like he was trying to take in everything at once without seeming like he was judging it. "This is nice," he said. "Very. You don't even know me." "I've got a pretty good idea now," I smirked. "Yeah? What's your read?" He turned to face me, hands in his hoodie pockets, standing in the middle of my living room like he belonged there. "You like your space. You overthink everything. You only keep things you care about. And you definitely have an emotional support couch. I raised an eyebrow. That's weirdly accurate. I'm good at reading people. He wasn't bragging, just stating a fact. We stood there a moment longer, the air between us tightening in that way that says something is about to happen. My heart beat faster, but not out of panic, out of awareness of the moment, of him. You want some water or something? I asked, because I didn't know what else to do. Milo smiled. Sure. I walked into the kitchen, pulled 2 glasses from the cabinet, and filled them at the sink. When I turned around, he was leaning against the doorframe, watching me. I meant what I said earlier, he said quietly. I passed him a glass. Which part? That you looked like you needed someone to notice. That hit harder than I expected. I took a sip to stall, then said, You're not wrong. He set his glass down on the counter, then stepped a little closer. I think we both needed this tonight, I nodded. Yeah, Milo didn't reach for me. He didn't touch me. He just stood there, eyes on mine, waiting for something. Permission, maybe. Or a signal. So I gave it. I leaned in first. Just slightly, and he met me halfway. The kiss wasn't perfect. It was tentative. Slow. The kind of kiss that asks a question instead of demanding an answer. His hand found my waist. Mine settled against the side of his neck. And the world got quiet in that way it does when you finally stop holding your breath. When we pulled apart, he kept his forehead resting against mine. I didn't plan for this, he murmured. Neither did I. We stood there in the kitchen, touching just enough to feel it, the warmth of each other, the reality of the moment. You want to stay? I asked. His eyes flicked to mine. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. He exhaled, then smiled. Okay. We didn't rush. I showed him where the bathroom was, gave him a t-shirt from my drawer. We changed in separate rooms. It wasn't sexy or cinematic. It was real. We climbed into bed like we'd done it before, even though we hadn't. Just lay there, side by side, the dark ceiling above us. My arm brushed his, then stayed there. He shifted closer. So did I. And in the quiet, with the window cracked open to the city sounds, Milo whispered, I'm glad you came tonight. I turned my head toward him. Me too, and I meant it. More than I've meant anything in a long time. I woke up to sunlight hitting my face in that sharp, too direct way that only happens when you forget to close the blinds. My brain took a second to reboot. The soft pressure of a body next to mine wasn't part of my usual morning routine. Then I remembered Milo, and I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel regret. Just this low, steady warmth in my chest. I turned my head slightly, and there he was. On his side, arm tucked under the pillow, hair a mess, breathing slow and even. He didn't look like someone crashing after a party. He looked peaceful, like this bed, this room, this moment. It all made sense to him. I stayed like that for a few minutes, just watching him sleep. Not in a creepy way, at least I hope not. It felt surreal. That someone I met less than 12 hours ago was now inches from me, looking like he belonged there. Eventually, he stirred. His eyes blinked open, unfocused at first. Then they landed on me. Morning, he said, voice thick with sleep. Hey. A small smile crept onto his face. Didn't dream this up, huh? Unless we're both still dreaming. He stretched, then flopped onto his back, groaning. This is so weird. In a bad way? No, he said quickly. I don't usually do this kind of way. But it doesn't feel wrong. Same. We lay there a little longer, the kind of lazy stillness that comes with no urgency. Eventually, Milo sat up and looked around the room like he was taking it in for the first time. He reached down to grab the shirt I gave him last night and pulled it over his head. It looked good on him. Of course it did. I sat up too. You want coffee? He rubbed his eyes. That depends. Do you make good coffee? I make drinkable coffee. I'll risk it. We padded into the kitchen, both barefoot, both half aware of how domestic it all felt. I set up the coffee maker while he leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me like I was doing something impressive instead of just dumping grounds into a filter. "What time is it?" he asked. "Almost 10. "Shit, I was supposed to meet someone for brunch." I turned. "You gotta go?" He looked torn for a second, then shook his head. "Nah, this is better." And I don't know why that hit me the way it did, but I felt it all the way in my ribs. That small, quiet choice he made to stay. We drank coffee on the couch. No TV. No background noise. Just the soft clink of mugs and the occasional murmur of traffic outside. He told me about his plans for the rest of the semester. He was finishing a marketing degree, hated most of his classes, and was tolerating adulthood one overpriced latte at a time. I told him about my work, how it sometimes felt like I was just passing time between emails and pretending to be more put together than I actually was. "It's kind of nice," he said eventually, "talking like this without worrying about where it's going." "Yeah," I said. "No pressure, no expectations. Just pancakes and bad coffee." I grinned. "Exactly." But we both knew there was something unspoken under the surface, something we weren't quite ready to define, and maybe we didn't need to. After a while, he stood and stretched. "Okay, I really should go shower and pretend to be a functional human." I walked him to the door. He paused there, hand on the knob, then turned back to me. "So, are you going to pretend this didn't happen? Or, do you want to see me again?" He smiled. "I wouldn't be asking if I didn't." "Then yeah, I'd like that." He pulled his phone from his pocket. "Here, put your number in before I make this awkward." I took it, typed my name and number, and handed it back. "You'll hear from me," he said. "I better." He opened the door, but before he stepped out, he looked back one last time. "I'm glad you didn't ghost the party," he said. "I almost did." "Well," he said, grinning, "thanks for not." Then he left. I stood there for a moment after the door shut. Just stood there in the quiet, a stupid smile tugging at my mouth. I didn't even want to go to that party. But I was so damn glad I did, Milo texted later that day. "Made it to brunch. It was exactly as mediocre as I expected. Thinking about those pancakes instead. And you." I stared at the message longer than I should have before replying. "I make better coffee than I admit. Come back sometime and I'll prove it." The three little dots appeared almost immediately. "You're on." And just like that, it started. Not a relationship, not yet, but something. We didn't label it, we didn't rush. There were no dramatic confessions or breathless professions of feelings. Just a rhythm. Easy, steady, real. A few days later, he came over again. This time with takeout and a playlist of music I'd never heard, but ended up loving. We sat on the floor, ate noodles straight from the cartons, and talked about the little things. The kind of conversations that don't sound important when you describe them, but end up meaning more than you expected. He told me about his childhood dog, the one that got hit by a car when he was 10, and how he cried for 3 days straight. I told him about my high school English teacher, the one who let me eat lunch in her classroom when I couldn't face the cafeteria. The more we talked, the more I realized how rarely I let people see this version of me. Not the cleaned-up version I showed at work or the guarded one I used around casual friends. This was different. With Milo, I didn't have to rehearse anything. At some point, we ended up on the couch again, legs tangled, his head resting on my chest while some indie playlist played in the background. "You always this good at being quiet?" he asked. "I just don't talk unless it matters." He looked up at me, one eyebrow raised. "And this matters?" I didn't answer with words. I kissed him. It was soft. Familiar now. But still electric in that way that made my stomach twist. The days turned into weeks. We didn't see each other every day. We both had lives, classes, jobs, responsibilities. But we started carving out space. Milo would come over late after a long day, kick off his shoes, collapse on my couch, and tell me all the dumb things that happened in his group projects. I'd crash at his place on Saturdays, fall asleep with my face in his shoulder while we watched some mindless movie we didn't care about. One night, I had a particularly rough day. My boss dumped a massive project on me with zero notice, my code broke right before the deadline, and my dinner burned because I was too distracted to check the oven. I texted him, "Today sucked, big time." A few minutes later, he replied, "Stay put." 20 minutes later, he was at my door holding a bag of fries and 2 milkshakes. "I figured you needed carbs and something cold," he said. "Also, I brought that stupid movie you said you secretly loved. The one with the talking dog?" I won't judge. I didn't say anything right away. I just stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. He stood there for a moment, surprised, then held me tighter than I expected. "You okay?" he asked, voice soft. "Better now." That night, something shifted, not in a big dramatic way, but in that quiet kind of way that happens when you realize someone has gone from being a maybe to a part of your everyday, a part of your life. Milo didn't need attention. He didn't need me to entertain him or keep up a version of myself that felt impossible to sustain. He just showed up, and I started realizing how rare that was. He never asked about where it was going or what we were. Not yet. He gave me space, time, room to figure it out without pressure. But the thing was, I didn't want space. Not from him. One evening, we were walking back to his apartment after grabbing coffee, and we passed by the park where we first met. Well, where the party had happened. He stopped, looking at the house like it held some kind of weird nostalgia now. "You know," he said, "you were the last person I expected to talk to that night." "Why?" "Because you looked like you were trying to disappear. I figured you'd leave after 10 minutes. I almost did. He looked over at me then. "But you didn't." "Nope." "Why?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Because you opened the door." He smiled at that. "Funny how that works," he said. "One door, one moment. One guy," I added. We kept walking, but the silence between us felt different. Charged. Like the words we weren't saying were growing louder. And I realized then, I wanted to say them. Just not yet. But I was close. It was a Friday night, about a month after that party, when Milo texted me something different. "You free?" I was. I had just wrapped up a mess of emails and the quiet in my apartment felt heavier than usual. I replied, "Yeah, want to come over?" His answer came seconds later. "Actually, can you come here instead?" That wasn't like him. Not in a bad way, just unusual. Most of the time, he liked coming to mine. Something about the couch, he said, or the way my apartment smelled like someone who actually knows how to do laundry. But I didn't hesitate. I threw on a jacket, grabbed my keys, and headed out. His place was a 10-minute walk, tucked into a second-floor unit of an old building with thin walls and the occasional mystery creak. He'd apologized for it the first time I visited, but I liked it. It felt lived in, like him. When I knocked, he opened the door almost immediately. He looked tired, not wrecked or sick, just not his usual bright-eyed self. His hair was damp, like he'd just showered, and he was wearing a hoodie I didn't recognize, something oversized and soft-looking, with the sleeves pushed halfway up his forearms. "Hey," I said. "Hey." He stepped aside to let me in. I noticed the lights were dimmer than usual, and there was a half-empty mug on the coffee table. "You okay?" I asked. Milo hesitated, then nodded. Slowly, like he was convincing himself as much as me. "Yeah, just weird day." I sat down on the couch and waited. He didn't sit right away. Just stood there a moment, looking down at his hands. Finally, he said, "I ran into someone today. My ex." I didn't flinch. I just listened. He was with someone new. And they looked happy. I nodded, not pushing. "It wasn't even that I cared that much," Milo said, finally sitting next to me. "It just brought stuff up, you know? Like all the dumb things I thought I'd stopped caring were suddenly back. And I hate that." I rested a hand on his knee. "It's not dumb." He looked at me then. Really looked. "I didn't text you because I wanted to vent," he said. "I texted you because you're the only person I wanted around tonight." That hit me somewhere deep in the chest. I didn't say anything. Just leaned into him a little, let our shoulders touch, solid and familiar. "I'm not great at being vulnerable," he added after a minute. "Same. But I've been thinking about you all week. I turned slightly to face him. Yeah? I don't know what we're doing, Drew, he said, but I want it, whatever it is. I nodded. Me too. He reached for my hand then, interlaced our fingers like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was. I'm not asking for anything dramatic, he said. I'm just saying, I want to keep showing up, if that's okay with you. I squeezed his hand. That's more than okay. We didn't need to say much after that. We sat there on his too springy couch, feet tucked under us, watching nothing in particular on the TV. He leaned into my side. I rested my cheek against his hair. Later, he fell asleep with his head on my shoulder. I didn't move. Not for a long time. Because, for once, I didn't feel restless, or half-present, or unsure of how to exist around someone else. I just felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. A few weeks later, Milo came over on a rainy Sunday afternoon. It was one of those cozy, stay-inside kind of days. The sky had been gray since morning, and the window panes rattled slightly from the wind. I had sweatpants on, a blanket already on the couch, and a half-eaten cinnamon roll I wasn't proud of. When he knocked, I didn't rush to the door. I already knew who it was. Milo walked in with his hood up, and drops of rain clinging to his sleeves. He kicked off his shoes, tossed the hoodie over a chair, and walked straight to the couch like it was his. And honestly, it kind of was by now. He plopped down beside me, leaned in, and pressed a soft kiss to my jaw before settling in like he'd been doing it forever. We watched a movie, something dumb and easy to half ignore. I don't remember the plot. I just remember the way he slowly curled up next to me, how our legs tangled, how at one point I rested my palm over his chest and felt the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing. Halfway through the movie, he turned his head toward me. Can I tell you something? Of course. He hesitated. Not out of fear, but like he wanted to say it right. I thought you were going to be a one-night thing, he said quietly. When I opened that door at the party. I didn't think you'd stay. I smiled faintly. I almost didn't. I know, he said. But I'm really, really glad you did. His hand found mine, fingers sliding between mine easily. Naturally. I don't know what this is turning into, he added, but I don't really care right now. I just want to be wherever you are. That would have scared me a month ago. Hell, even a few weeks back, I would have looked for the exit sign. But sitting there, in my quiet little apartment with the rain tapping against the windows and Milo tucked under my arm, it didn't scare me at all. It felt like relief. I don't want to be anywhere else, I said, and I meant it. He smiled, one of those soft, sleepy smiles he only gave when he felt safe, and leaned in to kiss me again. Slow. Easy. No urgency. Just warmth. We didn't go anywhere that night, didn't dress up or take selfies or post anything. We just stayed wrapped up in each other, talked about nothing, made grilled cheese at midnight, and fell asleep with our legs tangled and our hands still clasped like we didn't know how to let go. And that was the thing. I didn't want to let go. I didn't even want to go to that party. But then he opened the door. And now? Now I can't imagine my life if I hadn't walked through it.